Hello and welcome to Walking Without Rhythm, the podcast we do twice a year at this point. I'm Jeremy. With me is
Marcel,
Marcel,
how you
and
doing?
I'm getting there.
Yeah.
We got to talk about a book called Dune House Harkonnen by Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson, also known as a that I don't know why it was written. And I got my book club edition.
I have one of these new reissues.
Yeah, they changed the cover for the movie, but didn't really
Yeah.
put a lot of effort into the cover.
No. There's nothing about this cover that tells you that this is House Harkonnen, other than maybe there's like this griffin crest here
Eh.
at the top.
See, mine's got Vladimir Harkonnen and oh god, what is his mentat's name?
Oh, Peter DeVries. Piter, yeah.
DeVries.
Yeah.
So this book is just a decade of what happened between House Atreides and House Carino. It's just establishing things from Dune that will happen in Dune. Um, uh, it starts out pretty strong, falls apart about halfway through, and it kind of ends okay.
Yeah.
The
It
big
follows a lot of stories, a lot of storylines.
So we'll start with I'll start with the Fremen.
Yeah.
Um, Pardo Kynes is teaching Liet Kynes to be the next planetologist of Arrakis, but Liet Kynes is torn between that and being a Fremen, and he goes out on rapes. He does Fremen things, and he has a love triangle with his friend that's very pointless.
Yeah.
Then we have just the Harkonnens being evil, which is a good chunk of this book.
Yeah.
There's a whole thing between the Baron and the Benny Jesuit that goes nowhere because they poisoned him in the last book, and they're making him become fat and his body fall apart.
Yeah.
But it solely exists so that the node ship can be in Benny Jesuit hands for Heretics of Dune. And that's about it. Also, the Harkonnens are messing with Leto again.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a plot line that becomes a big thing at the end. But the thing that's interesting about House Harkonnen is that the Harkonnens themselves, and not all of them are evil, because the Baron's half brother and his wife are big characters in this, and they have a new baby, Faye Ralpha,
Yeah.
which puts this really close to Dune because he's not much older than Paul is in Dune. Um, Meanwhile, the Ixians are at war with the Twi'leks. The Twi'leks have basically won, and they have taken control of Ix,
Yeah.
renamed it Zuda. The synthetic spice is still a plot line, but we forget it periodically in this book because it's not very important.
Not until the end when they claim that they've mastered the formula and they've finally created a synthetic spice, but I guess that remains to be seen whether or not they're telling the truth.
Yeah, that's sort of the problem. And then like we have the remaining Ixians, the family. I don't even remember
Are you
their
talking
name.
about Romber and Kylea?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Romber gets married to a Benny Jesuit.
Yeah.
Um, and Ilea becomes Leto's concubine and is just the worst character in this, which is shocking because we have some of the most diabolically evil characters in this book.
Yeah.
But she's just the most annoying. She's one of the most annoying characters in a Dune book, I think, ever. She becomes like almost a Shakespearean villain,
Yeah.
because she gets manipulated by the Harkonnens and just becomes a pain in the ass. Also, Jessica's in this, and Jessica becomes one of Leto's other concubine for reasons for Dune. Um, there's a Kater is still in this.
The failed navigator, like he could never become a navigator, so because his brother
Yeah,
did.
Kater Pilru has become a terrorist against the Twi'leksu, keep blowing their stuff up.
And I get why, from a narrative perspective, you'd want to maintain his story to show what's happening on Ix, but it's not terribly interesting, and it really goes nowhere.
Mm-hmm. But wait, there's more.
There's a
My
lot of
f- I
storylines.
will say my favorite like nonsense story is Duncan Idaho's story of learning martial arts.
Yeah, so he travels to this planet, what, Ganaz or something like that, I think.
Yes.
It's like a, and like every island is a different like every island is ruled by a different sword master that teaches him a different technique or something like that.
Yes, it's very Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's very Star Wars meets just weeboos and fencing. It's
Yeah.
wonderful. And he befriends a guy who's part of there's these two houses that we've never heard of before that really they're mildly important because they're kind of feuding with one another for
Remember
like
their
10
names?
years and they keep
Do you remember their names, the
one
houses?
another. I don't even remember. It's not Richese because
Yeah.
that's another house that Leto's mother's from. But it doesn't they don't matter so much in this book. Like it's just there's other houses that exist, and
It's the Grummins and the Ikaz.
yes,
Yeah.
they don't like each other, and that starts like almost from the beginning when one ambassador kills the other ambassador at one of oh gosh, what is his name?
Count Fenring, his dinner party.
Count
Yeah.
Fenring's parties on Arrakis, and it
Yeah.
sends like 10-year conflict between these two houses, and the emperor is like, you can't do that, and then doesn't really do anything because he's a terrible ruler, and he's barely in this book, and he was like a main character in the last book. He's barely here.
Yeah. He's only there to the extent of letting the reader know that he's angry that his Bene Gesserit wife is only giving him daughters.
Yeah, because she's ordered not to give him an heir
An heir, yeah.
because of the breeding program.
Right. And they're like what, 2 generations away from having the Kwisatz Haderach. So
Yeah, well,
yeah, we know how that turns out because
yeah, I mean that gets set in the motion in this book, but like the other big story is Gurney Halleck's story.
yeah. That was
Gurney,
that was a heartbreaking story.
oh gosh,
It was tough to read.
yeah, Gurney. It's always been clear that he hated the Harkonnens, but we find out why, and the less said about it, the better. It was one of the most shocking things I've ever read in a Kevin J. Anderson book.
Yeah.
Uh,
This book was really, really violent.
and
And yeah, dark.
graphic.
Yeah, and graphic.
One of,
Needlessly so at points.
yeah,
Specifically in that storyline.
yeah, it was really gratuitous and heinous.
Yeah.
Um, I will say, like,
There is rape in this book.
yeah, there was a lot of hard RN
Yeah.
and torture
Yep.
and forced enslavement.
Yes.
The Harkonnens are evil, and oh gosh, what is the? I always forget his name. Fey Ralph's brother,
Oh, Raban. Glossu
Raban,
Raban.
aka
Yeah.
the Beast, for
The
some
Beast.
reason. He gets dropped in some poopy water at the end of the book, which was incredible.
We
Like,
get
he just goes crazy in this book.
we find out why he's called Beast Raban in this book. We didn't even need to know that, but they spell it out for you why he's called Beast Raban.
He's just so terrible. He's so dumb. He's so dumb and so evil, and he just messes
Yeah.
things up for everyone.
We get to meet his parents in this book. Maybe I don't think they were in the last book, so I forget his mother's name, but his dad's name is like Abulard or Abelard.
Yeah, Abelard.
Yeah.
And
I thought he was a decent character, Abelard.
yeah, I feel bad for him.
Yeah.
I feel bad for both of them. It's just raised an evil son, and then they
Yeah.
get a baby,
Yeah.
and then the baby gets spoilers. The baby gets taken away, but you know that that's going to happen from the get go.
Yeah. I wasn't aware in the original Dune series just how much of an age disparity there was between Raban and Fade Routha.
Yeah, well, Raban's not even in Dune,
He is. He's in the first Dune book.
is he? I
Yeah,
don't remember him.
yeah. Well, because he's such a nothing character. He takes
I thought he was
he takes
dead,
over
and I thought they referenced him.
after the Harkonnens betray or they destroy House Atreides and they take over Dune again. He is installed as like the interim governor of Dune, and then gets basically kicked out by his uncle, and his uncle takes over.
Oh, so they're oh, I get why they're doing this then. They're establishing another villain for Paul of Dune.
Yeah,
That makes sense. I mean, Fenring is kind of a villain in that too, because
yeah,
his wife carries Feyre child.
yeah. There was two other things we didn't really mention. So spoilers: Duke Vernius is alive in this book. I don't think he died last book, so it's not a
No,
big
he
deal.
was there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
and he does something stupid.
yes.
He entirely pointless.
Yeah, just such a pointless plot. And then the other thing that we didn't talk about was Duke Leto has a son with Kylea,
And I hate it.
Victor.
I hate this whole plot line.
Yeah, it was
It's
rough.
one of those things. So here's the problem with these Prelude to Dune books. And I think I'll probably stand by this statement after reading the next one too. This shouldn't have been a trilogy. If you're
Yeah,
going to do this, it should have been one book. Just make it a
yeah.
little longer because this book's really drawn out.
It's a long book.
It's too long for what it is.
Here, this copy I can tell you it's over 700 and it's almost 750 pages long. This copy.
Yeah. Like I'm reading it right now, which is over 1,000 pages, I believe. And that's faster paced than this. I
Yeah,
did,
and like I said, it really jumps around a lot too. Like really, really jumps. Every single chapter, and the chapters are fairly short, are focus on a different plot line of the ones that we've spoken about.
yeah, I don't. Would you recommend this?
I guess I would say for people who really, really, really want to know more
Yeah.
about the Dune universe, I think that this fills in the gaps. But from a narrative perspective, I don't know that it's that satisfying. And the reason why is because a lot of the stuff we didn't really need explanations for. I mean, I say this as a Star Wars Expanded Universe fan, but I don't know. I mean, I didn't love the fact that Duke Leto had a kid before Paul, although it's been said to me that the reason why that's the case is because they have to kind of establish why in Dune, Paul is so important to Leto. I don't know that was really necessary.
No, I argue it takes away from it.
Right.
It's so
or why Jessica gave him a son as opposed to following the Bene Gesserit breeding program, because she was supposed to give him a daughter, because what they wanted was like a Harkonnen son who probably would have been Fade Routha, hooking up with a Atreides' daughter, and that would have produced the Kwisatz Haderach.
Hmm. But no, and like in the original Dune, it's explained that she just loved her Duke that much, and he loved her.
Yeah,
And I'll tell you what the best part, like some of the best part, like character stuff, is between Leto and Jessica. I thought
yeah,
that that was written incredibly well for this book.
yeah.
Unfortunately, it's intermixed with Kalia just being villainous and obnoxious. Heavy on the obnoxious. He's one of the most obnoxious characters I've read in a while that wasn't called Holly Gibney or
Or
Gwendy.
Gwendy. Yeah, so, in the background of Kylea being obnoxious, there was she had what, like a lady in waiting, like a maid,
Mhm.
who, was a Harkonnen agent who was filling her
Yeah.
head with lies and making turning her against the Duke.
Mhm.
But that doesn't justify her behavior. Like, he went out of his way to build this chamber for her out of, like, one of the rarest gems and,
That Gurney Halleck helped mine as a
yeah,
slave.
yeah. In all of the universe, and she, she was touched by it, like, in the moment, and then, like, weeks later she just goes back to being a horrible person to him.
Yeah.
Oh, and then tries to kill him.
Yeah, and ends up, well, should we spoil?
I don't know, we can keep it, we
Let's
keep
keep it vague.
yeah, let's
Give
keep it
someone
vague.
a reason to go through all 700 plus pages of this. But I think it's better written than Atreides,
Yeah,
but they seem more comfortable writing this, but I don't think it's that great.
yeah. What's interesting is I was looking at the page count for this one, and it's very similar to House Atreides, and then for House, Corno, the last book, it's like 100 pages shorter.
Oh, thank God.
Rise had the same reaction.
Oh,
Um, I think these prequels suffer from making them too close to the original Dune series. Like, I get why you'd want to go back in time and explain, like, what happened with, like, the Butlerian Jihad and stuff like that. That seems like a very interesting thing to do. These
mhm,
ones, we know all these characters from Dune, and so you really run the risk of these characters not matching up with how they're portrayed in Frank Herbert's novels.
mhm.
Uh, you have Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson writing this, and I think they did a good job with the characters. Like, they feel like the characters for the most part from the book, but I don't know. I like, again, like, there were some narrative choices, like you said, like, it takes away from, you know, Leto having Paul and loving Paul if he already had, like, a kid before him.
Yeah, well, here's the big one. The big thing I was just like, why is this in this book? Well, the node ship, that was annoying, but that was something from the last book that shouldn't have been there. Chair dogs are in this. The horror that is chair dogs. There shouldn't be chair dogs. I don't mind laser tigers being in there,
They mentioned those too, yeah. At least we didn't get
because those
futars.
were in Children of Dune, and that's pretty
Yeah,
close to this. It's a few decades after this.
yeah. We never got futars though, so we're safe for
Oh,
now.
thank God, no futar. That wouldn't make any sense
Yeah.
because they're an evolution of humans that hasn't happened yet.
But
Um,
I when I saw chair dogs, I was like, okay, everything's on the table here.
yeah, the Harkonnens have chair dogs. I don't. Ugh, one of the most disgusting things ever devised in a science fiction book is chair dogs. Ugh. But the thing that I didn't like is the vision of Paul that the Fremen have.
Yeah,
That was stupid. That was
yeah.
really dumb.
What I will say though is I like the Fremen parts more than I thought I would in this book. Generally,
Mhm.
um, I like how Liet Kynes kind of goes on his own exploration journey, like, of self-discovery. I thought that
Yeah.
was he's one of the better characters in this book, I thought. And then the stuff with his father Pardo, it's, people can guess, like, it doesn't really end well. Like, characters that aren't in the Dune series are
Yeah,
probably
but
not gonna. Yeah.
there's good development of their relationship from the
Yeah.
beginning of this to the end.
Yes.
Um, It's the same with Duncan. Duncan Idaho's like hero's journey happens in this. He goes through his Empire Strikes Back training.
Okay, so your least favorite character was Kylea.
Mhm.
What was your least favorite storyline?
All of the her family stuff. I hated all of it because it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Uh, but like Leto's story's pretty bad, with the exception of him and Jessica's romance that starts happening. That's like the one saving grace thing.
Yeah.
Um, it's just frustrating. It's like the Atreides didn't have anything to do, and then they come up with I with Ilea's like craziness at like the very end of the book, and then he goes like Leto goes through some craziness. I won't. We don't need to talk about that. It's so tacked on and bad. Um,
You know, one thing from House Atreides that I thought was going to be a bigger deal in this book was and it does come up a few times, but they barely talk about it. Is this feud between the Tleilaxu and House Atreides and Leto? Because in at the end of the first book, the Harkonnens used the No ship to attack the Tleilaxu ship, and it make it look like it was coming from the Atreides ship when they're all together
on the guild
on the guild, yeah,
ladder.
navigator. And
Yeah.
so I thought that that would like have significant plot points in this book,
Mhm,
or play out. But it didn't. It didn't play out nearly as much as I thought it would. It kind of comes back at the end.
mhm. Honestly, I like well, I mean, Gurney's story is the most fascinating. It's the most depressing
Yeah, it is the most depressing.
until halfway point, and then he gets tied in with other characters' storylines for no reason other than he was a smuggler.
Yes.
But he doesn't do a lot of actual smuggling. I just want to point that out. We're
Yeah.
told he has smuggler contacts, but he really just plays the ballast and does nothing during
Yeah.
that whole part of the book.
Yeah. He escapes from Gady Prime, which is where he's living in the beginning of the book. And then like the next scene that you see him in, he's with another character and you're like, "Whoa, wow, how did they link up?" Like there was just no transition period whatsoever. He's already
Yeah.
smuggling with that person. And so it was it was a bit jarring, but I actually really like Gurney's story, other than I think the gratuitous violence probably wasn't needed as
Mhm.
much, but I liked his story. And
They
Duncan's story kind of grew on me after a while as well, I would say. It got better. It got
Duncan's
like
it's
more
just a
exciting. Yeah.
departure,
Yeah.
and it's the with the Grummans and
The Akaz. The
the
Akazi.
Akaz, it's the
Yeah.
only ties to that, and
Yeah.
you don't even think it's gonna tie together, and then suddenly, I think this story got away from the authors.
Because they made it too big. There was too long. There was too many plot threads to keep
Mhm.
track of.
Yeah.
It was way too long.
You know,
'Cause I
most
remember
of the Dune books don't have that many plot lines. It's only the first one that really has all
yeah.
the plots.
Well, like think of God Emperor. It has like 2 or 3 plots and they all kind of converge on one another at one point. So
Mhm. And, like, I'm Children of Dune, it's only a couple. Dune Messiah, it's literally
it's the
2.
one. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's yeah, Paul and his sister. Yeah.
Well, Paul and the, Mahayam,
Oh
who
yeah.
becomes the ultimate villain in that book. She becomes a straight, a mustache twirling villain in Dune Messiah,
Right. Right.
which that I didn't talk about this when we reviewed Dune Messiah, but, like, that beginning chapter is like a if you ever read From Russia with Love?
The Bond novel? No, not yet.
Okay. Well,
It's on my
that
list.
novel opens with Shmesh. Shmesh is, like, the villain in the early Bond books. It's a secret part of the Soviet Union, and Bond's foiled their plan several times at this point.
Is this like a Spectre prototype? Like it was before
Yeah,
Spectre?
before
Yeah.
he had come up with Spectre.
Yeah. Okay.
but they are part of the Soviet Union. They are the Russians,
Yeah.
and they're like they kill spies. Like that's their purpose. And Bond has foiled three of their plans by this point, and so they're in a board meeting, and they're coming up with how to ruin Bond, not just kill him, but humiliate and kill him.
Right.
And the Doom Messiah opens the same way with the Reverend Mother and Irulan
Yeah.
and several others that are only important in that book because they all spoilers. They pretty much all but Irulan get killed because Irulan betrays them at like the last minute,
Yeah.
which is some of the worst writing Frank Herbert's ever done. That wasn't in Heretics of Dune, um, but like it just feel the same. And I never brought that up.
Yeah. It's like a
Um,
dark council for sure. Like they
mhm.
just plotting against Paul in that book.
Fine Edition says, "What's up, my guys?
Hello, sir. Good to see you, Brady.
Hello. We're dealing with a book that I really wanted to read a bunch of other books while reading."
um, I really liked Abelard's storyline with his wife. I thought that was like it's like how do you deal with the fact that your son, Raban in this case, is a
They're
psychopath?
pacifists, and I
Yeah.
loved that foil to
Yeah.
Vladimir Harkonnen. His brother's a pacifist, and they live on a planet with monks and whalers.
Yeah.
I th-
Lankavale. Yeah.
And that was cool.
Yeah.
And then their son murders all the whales.
Oh my god.
The most disgusting matter ever because he's not only evil, he's just really dumb.
I just
He
oh man.
murders all the whales, he throws his grandfather off a cliff.
It's actually funnier if you imagine Dave Bautista, who plays him in the newer movies, doing these things.
Oh my god, that is his character.
Yeah, I'm
I
telling you.
remember when they initially showed the trailers, and I'm like, why is Batista Fey Ralpha?
Yeah, imagine.
I was really worried about that because, like, that'd be fine if Timothy Chalamet was like a big dude, but he's not. He's like the actual correct Paul size.
Yeah,
Because have you ever seen the '80s Dune movie?
of course.
Yeah, Sting is Fate Ralph. That's like what everyone remembers because he comes out when he's introduced. He comes out in a cod piece.
That's right. And he's nothing else, just the cod piece.
Well, because he wanted to be naked. This is my favorite Sting because Sting was so egotistical. This is like
Yeah,
the height of like the police. I think it just like Synchronicity had just come out, and like it's the height of the police's popularity, and he's about to become a solo artist. He's like, I can act too, and he's like, I want to be naked in this movie. And David Lynch is like, sure, because I'm a weirdo. David Lynch is a really weird filmmaker. The producer said no. And so they
okay.
came up with that bizarre cod piece for
Look,
him to
let me
wear.
tell you something. I'm gonna tell you something, and I put this on the record, and people are gonna rake me over the coals for this. I prefer Sting to Austin Butler,
Yeah.
and the
I
reason why,
prefer that 80s Dune movie to the new one simply because like it gets some of the tonal stuff
yeah,
better.
I prefer it as well to the newer stuff. But the reason why I prefer Sting particularly to Austin Butler is because I think Sting is more charismatic than Austin Butler, who just plays the character like he's a psychopath.
Mhm.
And he is a bit of a psychopath, but the thing is that Sting, like he's supposed to be like the backup plan if things with Paul don't work out, right? He's supposed to be like the potential other Quetzal's Haderach, which is like this Bene Gesserit Messiah that they've been working towards for however many hundreds of generations. Like
Mhm.
it has to be someone who isn't like completely insane, right? They have to have
Yeah.
like a bit of like charisma to them and or magnetism. And I think Sting has that much more than Austin Butler in that role.
He seems smarter. Because that's the
Yes.
thing from the book is Fey Ralph was like schemes against Vladimir Harkonnen.
Yes.
Um like twice in the original Dune.
There's a scene in this book, House Harkonnen, that I remember you and I were talking about as we were reading it, and it was Baron Harkonnen with like baby Fade Routha, and it's like, why is this scene in this book?
because they wanted comedy, and then it just
But
ends with Piter having to change a dirty diaper.
you can't have that scene in the same book where Gurney Halleck is being forced to watch his sister getting raped. Okay, you can't have these
Yeah.
two in the same book. It's just, I don't know. It boggles the mind. But this book is so long that it's like 3 books in one.
Fine Editions asks if we would do an episode on Dune Prophecies when it comes out. That's going to be in several seasons. So, what we want to do is we want to read all the books first, and then we'll do the film and TV adaptations in order.
Yeah,
So, we'll start with, well, I want to start with Jodorowsky's attempt at Dune. We talked about
definitely.
this the other day
Yeah.
with his fever dream of making Dune an acid trip movie.
Oh, we'll get to that. He wanted to make it like 18 hours or something like that. He
Yeah,
wanted,
w
yeah.
he was a nutcase. He made El Topo. Have you ever watched El Topo?
No, but I think there was another movie he made, like The Holy Mountain or something like that. I've seen that movie. Yeah, really weird stuff.
Oh, yeah, he's a weird filmmaker, not suited for Dune. It's funny because everyone else that worked on like, in pre-production on that went on to, like, make Star Wars and Close Encounters and Alien.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Geiger was part of that because he assembled the crew, right? Like he had the vision, he had but then he wasted all of his money on the storyboard.
Oh, yeah, and they made that documentary
Yeah, we'll
about
get to
it.
that. We'll get to the documentary and
He's
Jodorowsky's
crazy.
Dune.
It'd be more interesting talking about this book.
Huh. Well, you see, you liked the book when we started reading it. You were kind of like you were getting into it, and then I think
Yeah,
as
and then
time
the
went on,
halfway point happened, and it started floundering, and it was just Atreides garbage.
yeah, for a book that is called House Harkonnen, I thought it would focus more on the Harkonnens, and it does to a fair extent. But
Well, I got so
yeah,
frustrated between when the Benny Jesuit, um, Vladimir Harkonnen plotline goes nowhere.
yeah,
It does nothing other than the node ship is out of Harkonnen hands.
yeah. That's such a when he confronts them. Um, that's such a weird scene too.
It is. I kind of loved it because it was so strange,
Yeah,
but I thought there would be more conflict and there'd be actual fighting.
yeah. He shows up on Wallach 9. I didn't realize it was public knowledge, or at least like that the barons would know, or the dukes or whoever would know where the Bene Gesserit were based out of.
Yeah, it would be because they go and they look for women, they look for concubines.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah. And so he shows up there, and then they kind of fake him out. They're like, "Oh yeah, follow us." And then he follows them into a dark room, and all these sisters are just like running past him, faking him out.
Yeah.
It was such a weird
Magneto
scene.
Alex is being a sweetheart. He's like, I can't give you a super chat. Well, because I don't have enough subscribers, so people subscribe.
Yeah.
And then you can throw your hard-earned dollars at a drunken fool
Oh,
and Marcel.
I thought you meant me and you. I was the drunken fool, and you were the.
No.
Um, this came out in the year 2000. This book, 24 years
Yes.
ago. Yeah, 24 years ago. It seems like it was a book that was written though in like the 90s. I don't know why, it just does.
This is that weird transition when Kevin J. Anderson left Star Wars.
Yeah.
Because some of this feels very Star Wars-esque, specifically the action, like when Duncan Idaho and the other cadets fight the
Yes.
Grummins.
Yes.
That felt like Jedi Academy fighting, which I liked. I loved all of that. It
Yes.
was wild, the amount of fighting with different weapons.
Yes.
It stayed true. My problem with, and this is a Frank Herbert thing too. There with Dune, it's very clear. The thing I really liked about the combat, you couldn't use laser guns on Arrakis because it would attract the sandworms. And you can't use shields, so you're basically to sword fighting. And
Yes.
that stays true for the first, like, Dune Messiah as well, but then laser guns just become the default weapon going forward. especially like in the last two Herbert books, and then in this, everyone's like shooting laser guns at one another. So when like the Gromans and the cadets on what was it, Ikaz, they fight.
Ginaz,
They're
yeah,
using
like,
like swords and bludgeons and crossbows and um Mauler pistols that shoot the darts. Like it was wonderful. I was like, finally, it feels right. Because there's some things in this book, like with the chair dogs, for instance, like it feels out of place. Like they were too removed from the original Dune that like they forgot like continuity stuff, and it just
yeah,
kind of weird. Or like having the node ship.
yeah.
Why did that have to come now? Like, if they had the node ship in, like, say, Paul of Dune, I'd probably be more forgiving, but that really I'm still harping back on that. That just doesn't make sense.
Well, I had pointed out to you, I like the no ship is something that appears in the later books in Frank
Mhm.
Herbert's Dune. So like we don't, and those books happen like thousands of years after the original Dune. So is this ship just been around for thousands of years?
Well, it's old. It's old in there, but, like, my whole thing the Harkonnens haven't been a thing since I don't know. Well, they stopped being a thing in Frank Herbert's books almost after the first book.
Yeah,
But you don't hear about Harkonnens, period, like Children of Dune on.
yeah. Uh,
Um,
other than I think, well, in Children of Dune, there's the big plot line with is it um Alia, Paul's
well,
sister?
yeah, well, that's Baron. That's the Baron
That's the Baron.
controlling her. He's
Yeah,
dead.
yeah,
I'm not counting that. I mean, like, the bloodline of Harkonnens is basically gone. Like,
yeah.
Frank Herbert never picks up what happened with Fey Ralph's child.
I forgot
And
about that.
I'm as well because that's the plotline of Paul of Dune.
Okay.
That
Now,
is something Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert pick up on.
because
It's
everybody's
like,
having kids before the original series in this in these prequel books.
yeah. Like there's just I don't know. It's just weird. Like the Harkonnen because the Harkonnens have basically been bred into the Atreides because Jessica's a Harkonnen. So like there's no point. So it had to have happened. Like I always assumed the node ship was like some sort of something that happened in retaliation to what Paul did to the Harkonnens at the end of the first book. That's kind of what I thought of it. And so when it showed up in this, I was like, "Oh, that's weird." And the Benny Gesserit, did they really know about it? It kind of sounded like they stumbled upon it on accident
Yeah,
in Heretics of Dune. But that whole part is so weird and disjointed, and that's when they're focusing on making the ultimate Gola of Duncan, Idaho remember everything, which we now get to see what that's like when they do that to a Gola, which
yeah,
was
that's
weird
yeah,
and
um,
unpleasant.
very unpleasant.
Yeah, poor Duncan, Idaho, he just doesn't get to die.
There are some kind of like weird, sinister things revealed about the Tleilaxu in this book, right? Like, I think um, maybe probably nothing that we didn't know in the original books, but just like there was a scene where they stumble on like the females or whatever.
Oh, yeah, because they use them for their the Golas.
Axolotls, yeah, the goal is, and it's very disturbing. One thing I will
Yeah.
say though, before I forget, that I really, really like about these prequel books that I think are done very, very well. Every single like chapter has a little like snippet at the beginning,
Mhm.
and I think most of them actually I thought were pretty like enlightening or very well. Like I just pulled one up randomly. I'm gonna read it because it's very short. The universe operates on a basic principle of economics. Everything has its cost. We pay to create our future. We pay for the mistakes of the past. We pay for every change we make, and we pay just as dearly if we refuse to change. Guild Bank Annals, Philosophical Register. Like it's not bad. It's not bad. I feel like maybe they spent most of the time writing these little snippets and kind of over-engineered the book a bit.
Here's a cool. I do agree. I like all those little
Yeah,
openings. I liked every single one, to be
yeah.
honest. But Fine Editions brings up something. Do you think that Kevin J. Anderson used unused Star Wars story ideas that he didn't make for this? No, he saved that for Saga of the Seven Sons. That is especially Hidden Empire was his idea of what New Jedi Order would be like. At least that's what Matt Wilkins told me back in the day when we talked about it. Um, Magneto Alex also brings up that
Oh,
he thought the no ship was a prototype in this book. Yes, it is, but I mean, like, it's just too advanced for this point. I don't know. I don't know. It's just weird.
I
I
almost
don't.
wonder if is Kevin J using unused plot points, or is he just kind of like rehashing some of, or maybe both, I don't know, but like some of these felt a bit rehashed from stuff that I've seen in his Star Wars work, which isn't necessarily a problem. I mean, like if it's a good idea, like use it in a
Yeah,
different universe. But
he can write action though. I will say that. Anytime there's like a fight, it's wonderful in this book. Except for when it's Gurney just getting beaten up.
oh
That's
my
not so
god, that was so, how was like, how does anyone survive that?
it's his will and his ballast set.
How did how did just from like a narrative perspective, why did the Harkonnens keep him alive? Would have
I
just,
don't know.
yeah.
I really didn't get that. Scott Johnson asks what's a Dune.
It's this cheap Star Wars knockoff.
That did better does better numbers than Star Wars does now.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's about all I have on this. What would you rank this book?
What's the ranking system we're using? I forgot. What did we use
Well,
last
you use
episode?
whatever because I'm a chaos person. I use a star ranking. Matthew and Adam use a letter grade ranking like they do
Okay.
in United States schools.
I'll give it a 3 out of 5 stars.
Yeah, that's about what I give it. 3 out of
Yeah,
5.
3 to 5 stars.
Mm.
As it relates to the original Dune books, it might be like more like a 2.5 or 2. But I
It
think
isn't the worst
yeah,
thing
yeah,
I've read.
as a book on its own, I think that it's solid 3 to 5 stars.
Yeah,
Too- A
I
bit too
mean,
long.
like there are worse Star Wars books. It wasn't written by Karen Miller.
um, yeah, I don't think I've ever. What she wrote? She wrote Wild Space. One of those.
Yes, and
Yeah.
then Stealth and Siege.
Stealth and Siege. Okay, yeah. I don't think I've read those books.
They're ghastly. They're horrible.
Yeah.
Some of the worst things. People get mad at me when I say that. I don't know why. It's like when people get upset when I say that I don't like Hand of Thrawn 45 Sword of the Jedi trilogy. People get mad at me for that. It's my opinion.
Yeah. Hey, look.
Oh yeah, that's right. Siege and Gambit. That's
Siege and
right.
Gambit.
Matt Wilkins.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Where is he? He usually trolls these streams. Must be taking a nap.
Huh. Well, I guess is there anything that you want to see happen in House Corino?
Um, it'd be shorter.
Well, you already got that because it's like 100 pages shorter. So
Exactly. Maybe actually have the Emperor have a purpose. Um,
yeah. Well, I should hope so if it's called House Corino.
I will say, when's the next Legends podcast? Ask Dylan. Don't ask me. It's on him.
I'm pretty much done with Romber's character. I wanna see him go. Uh
Well, he's gonna have to.
yeah.
He's not in Dune.
Yeah.
I kind of have a sinking feeling of what's actually going to happen with Romber's character,
Yeah.
and I don't like it. Let's just say it stinks of Dave Filoni.
Okay. You can tell me offline because we don't want to spoil it, right? Because there's a pretty big plot point around Romber that I'm just not going to really get into.
Yeah.
But I'm curious.
All right. So let's get off of here. You all have a good night.